Welcome to the Waiting List podcast. Tell us the story.
It's like many things you start building from scratch.
And then I'm like, wait, I really do like watches because
you've seen so many watches that makes you excited.
I think I really do like watches.
Yeah. I think it's a great way to see if you are a watch enthusiast. Okay, welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Waiting List podcast. Today we have Zoe, and Zoe is the senior client advisor at Watchbox. So this is the first. You're the first person on this podcast who we can actually say is actually a dealer.
What an honor!
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, you know, some. I'm sure some of your clients are actually dealing on the side, but they'll never say that. But we could actually say you are a dealer, right?
It's true.
So for those who want to follow Zoe on Instagram, you can find her on at Watch Girl Off Duty, and it's fun.
Yeah,
you should go check that out. I love your dance routines.
She started a TikTok.
Yeah, I love the TikTok.
Dangerous field here, but yeah, TikTok has taken up way too much of my time recently.
Right. So let's get into it. So Zoe, how did you get into? How did you even get to Hong Kong?
I am originally from New York.
Right.
And I grew up there. In between growing up in New York, I also lived in Arizona for college, in Miami for a little bit, and then back to New York. And when I was offered a position at Govberg Jewelers, which is based in Philadelphia, I begged them to let me work remotely in New York instead of moving to Philly, but it wasn't happening. So I moved to Philadelphia. And I was there for about a year. And by the end of 2017, I got pulled over while I'm working in our massive trading space in Philadelphia. And I get asked if I would consider moving to Hong Kong for 3 months to help open up the office here. And my first reaction was, no.
So what kind of time frame are we talking about?
This is the end of 2017. So okay. I had been with Govberg Jewelers or Watchbox for about a year. It's not too long ago, almost 3 years now. And I'm such a proud New Yorker that to me,
you are.
I really didn't consider living abroad ever in my life. Maybe for college, but I love New York so much that was my home. And like I said, I was asked to potentially move to Hong Kong for 3 months to help out here. And my parents, or my mom specifically, she's like a very protective Jewish mother. Yeah. She was upset that I was moving to Philly, which is an hour and a half drive or 2 hours from New York. So again, my first reaction was, I can't move to Asia, even if it's for 3 months. I had never stepped foot in Asia before because to me that was always so far. I've traveled all over the world, mostly to Europe, even Africa, Australia even, which ironically is further. But Asia to me was always this place that I may never have the opportunity to travel to because it was just too far and I never had time off work to enjoy it. So I give my mom a call and I'm like, Mom, I was just offered a job for 3 months in Hong Kong and I really don't know what to do. And she was like, Zoe, are you fucking kidding me? Take it. Like, no question. And
you were surprised then?
I was surprised because she made such a big deal about me moving to Philadelphia.
Okay.
So to move to Hong Kong, even for 3 months, I was very surprised by that. And it inspired me. I was like, okay, I should consider this at least. So it took a couple weeks of like figuring out what this would be, what I would be doing out here. And obviously there was a potential, like go out there for 3 months, but potential to stay for longer.
Did you find out why your mum actually was not
not
that okay with Philly, but really okay for Hong Kong?
I'll tell you, Philly was more permanent. So I moved there for a job and it was more realistic that I would just live in Philly for as long as I was with Watchbox. But I told my mom at the beginning that Hong Kong would be for 3 months. And she was like, why not? Not realizing that as soon as I stepped foot here, it's like, shit, I'm never like, this is amazing. Why would I? Like, of course I'll stay longer than 3 months. So anyway, this is a very long-winded question of how I got to Hong Kong. Basically, Watchbox offered me the opportunity at the end of 2017 to come here and help open up the office because really we had just Josh, who you guys have met, who was...
Lovely guy.
Lovely guy. He's
So soft.
the best.
Yeah.
He was the only one from Watchbox that was at the Hong Kong office. So
Right.
they just needed another trader
All
here.
right.
And yeah, they picked me.
So has your mom come to terms with this now? Like, is she comfortable and happy that you're here?
It ebbs and flows. It's
Okay.
hard because she knows it's an incredible opportunity
Yeah.
and she knows how much I love it.
Yeah.
But again, me and her are very close, and it's just we're super far, and we have maybe 5 hours a day where we can communicate because of the time
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
I only go home maybe 2-3 times a year, now even less
Okay.
because of
Yeah.
what's going on. So at this point, she's come to terms. She's not super happy about the situation in the US anyway.
Yeah.
And she's like, you know
Yeah.
what, you're in a good place right now. So she's accepted a little bit more, but of course she wishes I was in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah. How was it? How was it like? Did you settle in straight away?
I did. I think that New York and Hong Kong have very similar energies. And where I loved I grew up in New York. So to me, when you go back and people go there for the first time and they're like, it's so chaotic, it's so busy, you get pushed on the streets if you don't walk fast enough. For me, that's just what I grew up with. So
Yeah.
it kind of feeds me, the energy. And when I moved to Philly, it's a much slower city. And I kind of missed the energy,
That pace.
that pace. And when I came to Hong Kong, I felt it. And
Yeah.
as soon as I was walking around in Central, I was like, this is New York City, but cooler because it's new. You know, it's culturally different for me. But then you also have you have East meets West here, which was super easy for me to be able to acclimate quicker than if, for say, I moved to Japan, that would be a lot harder because language barrier,
That's quite a
big
barrier.
cultural difference. But Hong Kong is I think, since it's such a large expat community, it was quite easy.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So now I've had that experience of totally just taking your bags and just going to another country, right? It is there's a little bit of fear, like, because you don't know exactly what you're going into. Like, how did you find that decision for yourself? Like,
So I'm
the settling in and
someone who doesn't think so much.
good. I'm like that too.
I analyze
Yeah.
personal situations when it comes to like relationships. I
Yeah.
overthink things. But when
Yeah.
it comes to opportunities, if I feel like it's something interesting, I
Yeah.
just do it. I really don't think about or consider what could go wrong. So when, moving across the world sounds scary to most people, I was like, why? Why does that sound
That's
scary
a-
to you? Just fucking do it.
And that, yeah.
Can I curse, by the way?
Yeah, of course.
totally, mate.
I'm always
You know,
swearing.
yeah,
Yeah.
We're very trashy over here.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
We
we're
like to keep it
trashy.
trash.
Yeah, we like to keep it
I
real.
curse in the
Yeah.
office, and then I feel like some of the
Everyone's
locals
staring
are
at
just
you.
like.
So what would you
"Who's this
say, like, the biggest difference for you between Asia and the US is?
girl?" The biggest difference,
It could be bad and good.
I think, just for me personally, this is my own personal experience. Growing up in New York, I really only had friends who were American, either, African American, Asian American, but people that were of other races, but were American. So
Yeah.
culturally, they were American. Living here, it's kind of rare for me to find another American. When I'm like at the gym or in
Yeah.
a store and I hear an American accent, my ears perk up because it's just so different. I never hear it anymore.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest difference for me is that I'm surrounded by different cultures. And at this point, I know more non-Americans here than Americans. And when I'm in the US, it just kind of feels like home just because it's what I'm used to.
So that's kind of like reverse for me. So I grew up in England, and there weren't many Chinese people. I think in my middle school there was like
interesting.
1,500 people and like 3 Chinese, right? So when that was supposed to be my home. When I heard Chinese, I was like, yeah, my ears would prick up, yeah. But I think you probably realize as well, just because you speak with an American accent doesn't mean that you're a decent guy or like we can be friends,
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
But it's definitely a very good icebreaker. If you hear that, you do actually have that tendency to want to know more about that person, right?
Yeah, even if it's at Starbucks and I hear it, I'll be like, where are you from? Oh my God, where are you from? You're American. And they're like, yeah, so what? Like, get over it.
So you've had this opportunity to come to Hong Kong, which is great. I think it's great to have met you in Hong Kong. Have you been anywhere else? Have you taken the opportunity, now you're stationed in Asia, to go anywhere else in Asia? Have you really?
For work or just to travel?
Yeah, both.
I worked a little bit in our Singapore office when we first opened in November. I went for the opening, and prior to COVID, I was going back once or twice just to help out with that office, because in Singapore, it's a very small office. So sometimes my existing clients that before we opened the Singapore office, I used to work with in Hong Kong. Now they're working with the Singapore office, and there were just certain clients that I would go to Singapore to meet directly with. So Singapore is really the only place that I have gone in Asia to work. Otherwise, I've traveled almost everywhere in Asia at this point, to the major cities of each country. So not in like the super nitty gritty. Like, I never have more than either a weekend or 5 days to go traveling. So I usually hit up, the bigger cities that people say you need to travel to.
Opportunity.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think the only places in Asia that I haven't been to yet is Myanmar,
Okay.
Yeah.
and Korea, actually,
Okay.
which is surprising.
Yeah.
I am
But
surprised,
I
yeah.
need to check that off my list for sure, both of those places. But besides that, I've been to every country in Asia, almost.
Very cool.
Almost.
Well, I used to live in Singapore before I moved here. So I'm very curious. When you go to Singapore now, what's the biggest cultural difference between Singaporeans and Hong Kong people?
Ooh, I think
Yeah.
that to me, and I hope no one takes offense to
Yeah.
this.
No,
You really put her on the
I probably
spot
make
there.
jokes about this.
I hope no one takes offense
Yeah.
to this, but they're tougher.
Yeah, definitely. As
They're
customers.
definitely tougher customers.
Yeah.
They're
Negotiation-wise.
negotiation wise, and also pickiness.
100%.
Maybe condition price is a massive thing in Singapore that we struggle with because of the GST.
Yeah.
So we don't struggle with that here in Hong Kong. There's no sales tax.
Yeah.
So we have a bit more negotiating room here in Hong Kong. When you go to Singapore,
Yeah.
we can't negotiate 7%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it gets a little bit heated sometimes
Yeah.
because we just can't lower the price enough for them to compete with other smaller dealers in
Yeah.
Singapore. So I would say, my experience was, super nice,
Yeah.
friendly, not nasty, but tougher.
Tough, yeah. If there's like when I travel at every hotel, we always make these jokes about like if you see a couple standing at the concierge or speaking to a manager, you're like Singaporean. They're complaining. Like definitely number one.
Interesting.
Like, yeah, that's like a joke.
I
that we
think
make,
that's
yeah.
generally when you hear about Singaporeans. Yeah, I should stop this. I started the jokes, right? I
Half
do
our
not want
listeners.
to confirm, right. So now you've spent 3 years, coming up to 3 years now in Asia. Do you see yourself settling down here?
There are other places that I want to experience living in before I settle down. So I'm 30 years old, usually at this point, not to generalize. Most women are thinking about settling down. I feel like I'm just starting. If I had the choice 5 years ago to move to Hong Kong, I would have. And then I would have felt a little bit more comfortable about, maybe living in Australia for a little bit, maybe London, maybe Japan. These are places that have always piqued my interest, that I think the lifestyles would really attract me, and make me happy. So not that I wouldn't settle down in Asia. It's just that there are other places that I want to experience before settling down. So I can't answer that question.
So you
Dude,
want
I
to
totally
experience
get that.
more to see which one's best suited for you.
Basically.
Yeah. I'm 30 as well. And I always tell people, like, as a woman, the moment you take out that pressure of, I need to have a kid by this age, I need to do this, tick off these boxes, your life just like opens up and you're like, I haven't even started living. There's so many things I want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that unfortunately for women, there is like a ticking time bomb, not to put it negatively, but it's never been something that I've considered in my life choices. Watchbox is not the first company that I've worked with in the watch industry. We can get there. I'll tell you the story at some point. There's been a lot that's led up to this, and timing and age has never been a factor. I've never said, well, you know, by 30 I want to be married, so I should move back to the US because I see myself having a family in the US.
Yeah.
So it's just never been something that I've considered. I go with the flow.
I really feel that. I mean, I hear that a lot from girls, right? And they say it, but I don't really feel like they actually mean it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And they actually, you know what I mean, right?
I feel like
Yeah.
I preach it. I feel like I preach it, I live it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are always like, why are you single?
Yeah.
Do you care that you're single?
And they pity
And I'd be
you.
like,
and-
honestly,
yeah.
I'm single and I have freedom to do whatever the hell I want. And that is something that's really
Is that
important
bad?
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are a bunch of idiots out there as well, to be honest. But, you know, obviously you work at Watchbox, so we need to get into.
Yeah.
How did you even get into the watch industry?
So I am the opposite of most people that work in the watch industry, where usually it starts with a passion or a really beautiful watch story, and then they are intrigued by watches and then they pursue a career in it. I'm the opposite. It literally fell into my lap. I worked in the hospitality industry. I worked for a private, well, really my first real job was in the watch industry. So I've now been in the industry for 9 years. And I'm just lucky because before that I was studying hospitality, hotel and tourism management, and I wanted to be a lawyer in the hospitality field, maybe represent hotels, because I just thought that was a field that would never get boring. It would always have interesting, weird things happening. And I was home in between semesters back in New York, and I just needed a temp job or an internship or anything. And my brother's best friend's mother was the business manager of Antiquorum in New York. So they do the same, it's the same auction schedule as other bigger auction houses. Antiquorum only specializes in luxury watches. It was, I mean, prior to the expansion of Christie's and Phillips watch departments, it really was the ultimate auction house for watches at that time. Maybe slightly on the decline, more competition coming up. But at that point, they were doing a June sale, June 2011. It's literally 9 years to the month where this was my first encounter in the watch industry. And they needed a temp to just answer the phones during the auction. So when everyone who worked at the company was in the auction room answering the phones and taking bids and everything, they just needed someone to answer the phones. And I had a lot of experience being a hostess, being at restaurants. So for me, answering the phone, I mean, for most people, it's quite easy. And I have a funny story about that I still remember to this day. But anyway, so I did a temp job for them for that auction. And I was fascinated watching the live auction on the computer. And I was sitting next to the accountant, who is just not in the auction because he had to do his own work. But I remember watching the auction and seeing these watches sell for, like, some watch sold for, you know, $2,000 and some watches sold for $20,000. And I was fascinated with the psychology behind that. Why would someone spend $2,000 on this but $20,000 on this? And I didn't understand the idea of value or sentimental value or market value or anything. I didn't even know that there was a watch industry. I thought watches were jewelry because my parents always had nice watches, but it was never a collecting thing. It was just an item. So I remember bugging the accountant saying, like, holy shit, it just sold for 20,000. What is that? Like, please tell me what? And then it would go for,
where do you get this?
Yeah.
Where'd you get this score from?
I was just like, people are paying the amount that they're paying for cars, for a watch that, like, they don't even need. You can use your cell phone. It's an antiquated thing.
Yeah.
So I was fascinated by it. And after the auction, I went up to the CEO and I was like, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. If you guys need a summer intern, I'm available. And they called me back in for an interview. I ended up doing an internship for 2 months. And my job, you guys will love this because it was so crazy. At the time, there wasn't any like digitizing of information. So all past auction results were just in auction catalogs or like written notes. And my job for the summer for 2 months was to take every Patek Philippe reference and just copy and paste or type up the descriptions of each reference. And in 2 months, I didn't even get through half of it. It was one, like, for me, I wasn't even interested in watches. So for me, it was super boring.
Yeah.
But that was my job. I had to literally copy and paste for like 9 hours a day, just auction results and information about references. Unbeknownst to me, they were actually considering firing their admin who answered the phones and helped with all the clients, and hiring me full time. And I still had a year left of school. So I didn't know this. By end of July, the business manager came up to me and said, you know, we really like you here, and we would like to offer you a full-time job as the administrative assistant, and gave me all the list of everything that needed to be done. And they offered me a salary, and I hadn't even finished college yet. So it was really appealing to me. I loved what I knew of the industry so far. And to get a job offer before college, I was never a good student. So my grades and my GPA was never going to get me a good job. So to me, getting offered a job before I even graduated was a no-brainer. And it was it was a really cool company. The office was beautiful. Cool people came in. And so I was the admin for 2 years. And then I got promoted to the inventory control manager, and through that I started learning about watches. But this was during the heyday of like the beginning of Hodinkee. So Ben Clymer used to walk in with like a camera stand and take photographs himself, and James Lambden from Analog Shift used to come in and buy like little vintage chronographs, and everyone was starting their businesses back then. It really was a peak, or the beginning of like watch blogs and a younger generation getting into watches.
It was really like the start of like digitalization of
Exactly.
the industry.
Exactly.
You know, Ben Clymer was a big pioneer for that.
Exactly.
You know, hopefully
it was before Chrono 24. Like there really wasn't that much information about watches online. So it was the start of it, which was fun.
Yeah. Hopefully I can be that for China. But
So that's how I got into the industry. It really was Antiquorum, and it started from a temp job and just kind of, you know.
I mean, actually, that is pretty much the bit where you got fascinated by the pricing and why would you pay this much.
Psychology behind it,
right? That's why I got into watches.
Cool.
It's exactly the same reason. So a friend of mine, I was into like menswear, all this kind of stuff, right? All these luxury trappings. And then eventually you're going to get to watches, right? And my friend bought this Rolex Datejust, and you know, he just spent like £2,500 in New Bond Street. And I was like, hang on, that's so much money. You know, why have you spent that much? Yeah, why have you spent this much money? You could buy so many things. Right. You could eat like, I don't know, that's your pizza budget for like at least 2 years. Yeah. And then obviously, you know, you start reading, and then you're screwed, aren't you?
And then really? you appreciate things that you never did before.
So now I would say you're very well versed. You know, you're very experienced in watch dealing. What's the highlight of watch dealing, aside from the fact you see so many cool watches?
That was my answer. I think that being a part of this community is really fun, as corny as that sounds. I've met really interesting people. You guys, your close friend Chester is one of my favorite clients. Yeah. I really enjoy, just similar to me saying that I like the psychology of, you know, why someone was spending that type of money. I also like the market aspect of it. You know, why one watch is worth this, one watch is worth that. Trends. I just kind of like the game of it, kind of, and seeing how it evolves and develops, and seeing a younger generation getting fascinated by it. I think just in the last 9 years that I've worked in the industry, it's changed so much, and for me, it's never boring. So I think that's what I really enjoy, is that it's a field that I can have a career in that I enjoy, where not everyone in the world gets to enjoy their career or their job.
How much does Instagram play now in
It's
business?
huge. Yeah? It's really huge. I mean, you meet people through Instagram. I've personally bought 2 watches from Instagram. It's just so visible that you have the opportunity. Your buyer base is massively larger than if you just, you know, post on your website or
That's something that
like
Watchbox
forums.
does really well in terms of the social media footprint. You've got the YouTube, you've got the Instagram, then obviously the people that work for Watchbox, they have their own personal Instagram. I think you're digital, and you've got a website, you've got your own app. It's very complete in quite a short space of time, I would say, really.
Yeah, it's something that we focus on.
Yeah.
We really think it's important, and I think we are one of the first and maybe the largest secondary market dealers that focus on social media content, YouTube reviews. Of course, Watchfinder and other
Watchfinder
companies,
is quite good, yeah.
they're great. Their content is great, but it's something that we put so much time and effort into.
Yeah.
Like, we built out a production studio in our Philadelphia office.
Wow.
So we had great content with great sound and good vibes and everything.
Yeah,
It's just such a big part of Watchbox.
Yeah.
So that's fun for me. I mean, Instagram's super fun. Again,
Yeah.
you meet a lot of people, but also it's just so powerful where a watch comes in and we haven't even inventoried yet, but I'll post it on Instagram and I got 10 people say, how much is it? And out of those 10 people, maybe someone buys it.
Yeah.
So it's very powerful. And Instagram, to me, I try to be as transparent as possible.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
Yeah, tell Josh to be a bit more interesting. Yeah.
You know what? He makes fun of me. So I don't think he'll ever be outwardly active and visible on Instagram.
I don't think it's actually his personality, right?
It's not.
really
He's
fit
so
him.
low key.
Yeah.
I'm not.
And what's the downside?
The downside is that I'm very jaded. So, you know, someone walks in with a watch that they want to sell or a watch that they want to buy, and let's say it's a Tag Heuer.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a really cool one.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not cheap and it's cool, but someone walks in with a Tag Heuer and I'm not excited by it.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're numb.
Numb.
Yeah.
And then someone walks in with a T30 and I've seen 3 T30s in my life and I'm not as excited about it as I was for the first time that I saw it.
Okay.
So it's a point of being jaded where I sound like the biggest snob ever, but it's just that I have access to it. And I would say I don't have access. I used to work in the auction industry. I used to have much more access to vintage. So I get really excited about cool vintage pieces because I mostly collect vintage, not really modern. But yeah, I think the downside is that I'm super jaded and someone walks in with a 10,000 watch and maybe I don't think
We've
it's
mentioned that
yeah.
before
it's
on the
super
podcast.
cool. And I'm
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
okay. Like,
Yeah,
good.
because I feel a bit like that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Because
No, it's
You've
just you hate
recently-
to admit it because it's like first world
It's
problems,
snobby.
right? Yeah, it's snobby. But then you're just like, it's not that I'm not impressed, but it's
Exactly.
just,
It doesn't
like,
excite you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But don't you
Yeah.
find that, excuse me, for the most part, I find the people that collect them more interesting. You know, like they have a
Yes, you
personality.
appreciate
Yeah.
for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
the people that collect Daniel Roths
Yeah.
with tourbillons or like really interesting
Yeah.
movements or pieces that are just not focused on Instagram or considered cool by influencers. When people walk in with those kind of watches, you're kind of like, that guy's cool.
Yeah.
Like he appreciates the things that not everyone does,
Yeah.
and that makes him a cool collector.
I mean, talking about Instagram, I've personally noticed, I feel like more ladies are coming into the watch collecting game. I mean, is that something you're finding as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know why though. Why it's suddenly, and it's ladies with very clear direction on what they actually want, right?
It's ironic because most female clients that I work with have no idea what they want. So I think when it gets
Yeah.
to the point when someone's a consumer versus a collector,
Yeah.
when you're a collector as
Yeah.
a female, you know exactly what you want and you're not going to buy something that you don't.
So how would you differentiate that between, let's say, just a normal watch kind of interest, enthusiast, lover to, actually, you're a watch collector?
I think there's a very clear line. Someone who just wants a watch as a piece of jewelry or an accessory versus someone who appreciates watches for different reasons and has stories about them and creates a collection that's more curated to their personal style. And yeah, I think there's a clear line between a consumer and a collector, both for men and women. For women, maybe even more so.
Okay, so I'm quite curious because I have this whole theory, and I always tell Dan this. Like, say we're using, okay, so a girl walks into a store, can be an AD, can be Watchbox, right? The problem right now is a lot of the guys are the salespeople, the guys, right? So then they're looking, say me, and they're going, what do I ask her? How do I suss her out? Does she love watches or is she here to buy a jewelry piece, right? So do you think as a girl, you have that intuition and you know exactly what to ask to get it out of her, to know what to like recommend her?
So I know of it on the side of when I go into watch stores to go shopping, and I just spit one little thing of knowledge, and they're like, "Oh shit, she knows, she knows what she's talking about." Now I got to be,
Hit the panic button.
now I need to be serious.
Yeah.
But when I first walk in, you know, it's more like you said, sussing the person out, where it's like, this woman is just going to want a small watch with diamonds and she doesn't care if it's quartz. And then, you know, I actually went into Hublot the other day, and first of all, the service at the Hublot boutique is incredible.
Okay.
They give me free chocolates every time I go
Oh my God. Is this the one at IFC?
No, in Central. But the best service ever. And I was
the chocolates are good there.
And I was like, you don't have to give me free stuff. And he's like, you walked into the boutique, so I'm going to give you free stuff.
I just love it how like chocolate really works for you,
does.
man. It does nothing for a guy. I'm telling you.
It's the thought, you know, they give you something. But again, so I walked into Hublot the other day to get something serviced, and they don't know that I work for Watchbox and that what I'm bringing in is not my watch, but I bring in a rose gold Big Bang. And of course they assume that it's my boyfriend's or husband's or whatever, but I'm wearing a vintage day date. And the guy walks in and he was like, I love your vintage day date.
That's so nice.
So immediately you can see that he appreciates someone who appreciates, you know, a cool watch. But, and then I start spitting knowledge about pieces that they have in their case. And then that's when the chocolates started pouring and they started really treating me as if I knew my stuff. And it's the same when I go into the Lange boutique, not to like name names and stuff. Even FP Journe, I walk in and the first thing, you know, they're pretty cordial. But as soon as I start talking a little bit about movements or case size, or I know this and I know that, they get excited.
Makes their day more interesting, probably. Yeah,
it makes their day a little bit more interesting. And then, like you said, Daniel, it's more like, oh shit, I need to be on my game. I need to like also spit knowledge. And it's the same with Watchbox. There have been a few women that walked into the office, and I have had women that say, like, I follow you on Instagram. And I love your personal style. What watch, like, what can you show me that you could recommend for me? And like, that's flattering to me.
You followed Zoe before you actually met her, right?
I think it's like, this is the other thing I was thinking. This is off topic. You know how there's XYZ, right? The cycling and SoulCycle.
Yes.
Like the trainers actually have their own playlist on Spotify, and you actually want to know, like, what does this person listen to? I feel inspired. And I think that's really important, other than I'm just going to start an account and post watches because it says nothing about you. But if I can identify with you on Instagram, I might be able to be like, okay, this is my style. I'm going to go ask her. I think it's cool.
Yeah, so what do you personally collect? What do you like?
Judge me as much as you want. I love Rolex.
Okay.
I think Rolex is such an incredible brand. What they've built, they've really, they've made Swiss watchmaking quite mainstream, but I don't see anything wrong with that. I think usually a first big watch for someone is typically a Rolex. You know, when you think of luxury watches as a consumer, you think of Rolex. There's just so many great things, and I particularly like the history of each of the models, and I don't get so crazy, you know, if there's a service dial or one hand's been replaced or that type of collector, but I do appreciate, you know, if it's a transitional model, or for me, I've always liked the 1803 for a day date for a very specific reason. I love Rolex. I think it's
Can't say anything bad about Rolex.
I know, but some people are like, well, you work in the industry, you have access to everything. Like, Rolex is so boring. And I think if you know the brand and you know certain models, it's not boring at all. You can have this day date that I'm wearing. There's 25 different dials that went with this one reference. I could have a whole collection on day dates.
I think I hear a lot of people say, you know, that's boring or whatever, you know, and sometimes I just feel like, okay, you just maybe haven't just reached there yet. You don't have an appreciation yet, or you need to maybe read up and think, oh, actually I was wrong. And unfortunately, there's not enough of that in the watch collector
yeah.
community.
Yeah.
But I wanted to move on to actual dealing because I think you're obviously a fountain of knowledge for that. But if I was to ask you, Lung, first, what do you think is hot right now? And then we can see with Zoe. Check with Zoe.
The current trend?
Yeah, current trends.
I think the case sizes are getting smaller. They're going back now. So it started getting bigger and bigger, and it was hitting 40, 41.
Yeah.
And then now guys are saying, wait, it's okay to wear a smaller watch. And I have been asking for smaller watches, so now they're going backwards. And I think...
From the dealing aspect?
You mean from dealing?
Yeah.
Oh,
What's hot on the
dealing.
market?
What's hot? Obviously 5711, 15202, CBs.
Yeah.
But I hope it dies out. And I think, FP is picking up, right? Those are the main... Rolex Daytonas.
Well, I think
Suddenly
those are
the
always
steel
hot, but I think current trends, definitely FPJ is on the
FPJ is on the
huge
rise.
up, I think.
Yeah.
And then it'll be interesting to see, I think like stuff like the Cartier crash is going to pull up Cartier a bit, right? So how wrong or right are we?
Yeah, you're totally right. I think it's very visible what's hot and what's not. All Nautilus models, COVID or not, were on the downward trend in terms of secondary market values because there was such hype around it. And then I think after a certain point, it gets a little bit boring and people delve into other things that maybe sports watches in general or other Pateks that are maybe a little bit more complicated and a little bit dressier. I think people, what's a current trend? That's everything that Lung just said is correct. And then I also think that what you said is correct. People are going into vintage Cartier a lot more in the last 4 or 5 months that I've seen in 5 years. People really ignore Cartier for a long time because they say, oh, they're a jewelry company. They're not a watchmaker. But the thing about Cartier to me, and I have one from my grandmother, and I would never have bought that myself, but I wear it because I admire it, and it's their sentimental value, of course. But to me, Cartier is a super classic brand that will never go out of style. And when when you see someone wearing a Cartier, it's kind of like, that they have taste.
Yeah.
And Cartier has made so many, it's like Rolex. They've made so many models, so many variations of the models that you can't really get bored of it. And the earlier models are so cool. There are so many different, they really played with case shape, sizes, designs, but you still have that classic, even
timeless
if they're
classics.
and even though they're super fun, they can get a little funky, like the Crash. Not for everyone, but if you appreciate it, it's such a beautiful brand. So I think that's a trend. I think people are going back to vintage Cartier that ignored it for a little bit because they were focused on vintage Rolex, really, or vintage Patek.
Something you touched upon was the hype, right? That hype exists obviously in the watch collecting, right? And the watch industry. But what advice would you give to collectors? Anything to avoid or anything that you should actually practice?
I never really started saying this until I got sick of selling Nautiluses, and
Oh my god!
But now my go-to really is buy what you like.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Something that really frustrates me is when someone goes, I want to buy an investment. I want something that I could buy now, sell it in a year or 2 years and make money. And to me, that's not the point of buying a watch. You can do so many other things to invest your money into. Watches, I don't think... Yes, you can hit a home run if you bought a 5711 in 2010 and at retail, and last year before it started to drop, you could have sold one for 75,000 US dollars. But to me, my biggest thing, and the collectors that I really resonate with that are my clients the most, are the people that collect because they love the watch, not because everyone else loves the watch, and not because you can make money on it, and not because it's going to look cool if you post it on Instagram. So buy what you like, design your collection. And I'm seeing such a massive trend, back to trends, of people that have been collecting for 5, maybe even 1, 2, 3 years, up to 20 years, that used to just be able to afford it, but go and they hear of a cool watch, they go buy it, or they go into a watch store because they're bored, and then they discover something that they like, and over the time they've accumulated this collection that's not focused. They have so many different watches, and they find that, there's maybe a handful that they really like and they'll wear, but the rest of them, they just sit there. So where Watchbox is great because you can trade watches. I'm seeing a massive trend in these guys that have 20 plus watches that come to trade 10 in towards a big piece, towards one watch. And they're starting to refocus their collections into something that's more curated. And to me, that's how I've always collected. I am not someone that buys just to buy a watch. I buy it for a reason. And I have a small collection, but it's curated.
Do you think you can tell when someone is collecting for resale value or they're actually buying? Because I see a lot of accounts on Instagram and I'm looking at his collection. I don't want to say his and hers.
Tell me later.
And then I'm like, you're clearly reselling this. And then when I'm having these conversations with them, I'm like, so why did you buy this piece? Most of the time it's a Nautilus, to be honest. And then they're going on about it. I'm like, no, these are facts about the Nautilus, but it doesn't explain why you bought it. So can you tell?
Yeah, you can always tell. I think that there's no like fire in their eyes when they see it. They're just like, okay, thanks. And like walk out, no discussion. Where the people that are really buying watches because they love that watch, they wear it out with like a smile on their face. I think there's definitely, there's nothing wrong to have fun and trade watches and make money from it. And if that's your end game, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
There's also ways to collect watches. I mean, things do have to move. You can't just, that's hoarding, right?
I think you're mostly speaking about someone who literally they get the opportunity to buy something at retail and they flip it the next day. That, again, nothing wrong with that. You can do that. You want to make money, right? I want to make money. That's
talking about this because actually it was a question I was going to ask later, but we're obviously talking about people that flip, right? When do you think is a safe period for a collector to get a watch without being blacklisted and flip it?
I don't know, because I don't know how much visibility the brands have on the secondary market. So for example, like I don't know how in touch they are with it unless it somehow gets brought back for service by a different person. So, if someone buys it tomorrow and then they go and flip it to a dealer literally 2 days later, it may be 5 years until the brand sees that back for service. Who the hell knows? So I don't think there's a safe period. I don't think there's a dangerous period. I don't know how visible the brands are unless it's a very rare limited piece. So I'm talking, you buy a Hulk at retail and then you go flip it the next day. Like Rolex is never ever gonna see that watch again for 5 years. They're not going to know. There's no, like, that's safe. If you're buying a 1 of 10, that new Onyx, or I don't know how many pieces were made, but that like black Onyx style 15202 with the diamonds, if you buy that and the next day someone's posting it on Instagram because they just flipped it, AP's going to know. So I think it depends on the watch, and I think it depends on the brand.
Okay, so there you have it. If you got Rolex, feel happy to flip.
Go for it. Come to me.
Come to Zoe.
Come to me. Right. I will make sure Rolex has no idea.
So we're going to finish off this interview with how's the global secondary market with, like, say, the local Hong Kong Chinese market or Asian market? What are the differences between that? Because that's a real question I basically wrote down first. When I did this thing, because I thought, you'd have the insights for that. So
there's actually a pretty big difference in the Chinese market and Hong Kong market. They're very much separated. So those are two categories in itself. But then you also have Asia and the US. I think because of the internet and visibility of pricing and everything, it's a very global market. But of course you have certain pieces that will sell better in Asia versus the US. And I find that with my client base in Hong Kong, we really don't sell a lot of Panerais. We don't sell a lot of Omegas. We don't sell a lot of Breguet. There's a lot of brands that don't sell well in Hong Kong on the secondary market versus in the US. Panerai is one of the best selling brands for our company.
Wow.
Same with Omega in terms of quantity, maybe not, value wise, but, so I think there's a clear difference between the US market. I don't really know about the European market. Maybe if I eventually move to London, I'll learn a little bit more. But I think in Asia, it's just a more, a slightly higher end market in terms of value. And then I find that maybe collectors are a little bit more, what's the word? Like seasoned.
Okay.
Seasoned collectors.
Asia.
Yes, of course. And I don't want to put,
no.
American collectors down, because there are a ton of extremely knowledgeable and massive collectors. Massive.
Yeah.
But I just find maybe the market in Asia is a little bit bigger.
I think in Hong Kong, I think it's very refined. I feel like it's quite mature in terms of taste.
Mature, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's the right word. Mature.
If you're talking about the whole collecting curve, and
Yeah.
what
Yes,
happened through,
exactly.
Yeah.
Mature is
And
the
because
right
there's
word.
like a population here that have quite a decent knowledge of watches.
Well, watches are a part of the
Yeah.
culture here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
So
a difference.
It's not too hard to get like influenced or the education from a friend. You know, that's and we're in Hong Kong. It's like one of the smallest places in the world, right? Wearing a watch, what you're going to be seen with, you see it everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's very interesting.
I think in the US it's not part of American culture to have super nice watches. Like if you
To
do,
flash.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same in Australia. Like people
Yeah.
don't really show off. In
Yeah.
America, people show off with their
Yeah.
cars
Yeah.
or big houses and
Yeah.
stuff. At a certain level, watches too, for sure. But in general, you can have a tycoon in New York who works in finance and he doesn't wear a watch because he doesn't want people at his office to, recognize how expensive his watch is.
Yeah, I mean, touching on that, I think you've touched on probably one of the couple of reasons why, which is in America, you can have a nice car, you can have a big house, right? And they invite people over for like the weekend or watch like the American football or whatever, right? And then they actually you've seen it, and they can control it, as in who they want to show to. In Hong Kong, nobody goes to anybody's house.
Exactly.
Because it's too small.
Right.
So anything what you want to portray about yourself has to be on your body.
Right.
Yeah.
Watch is one of the best things to do that with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But right now, okay, that's it. That's the end of the first interview we have with you. Hopefully we'll have you back on again.
Yeah.
But we have a quick fire for you. before you
I'm
leave.
shaking a little bit. I've been nervous this whole time.
Right. Have you ever sold a watch to someone and thought, shit, that looks really bad on you?
Yes.
Okay, what watch was it?
A Hublot Oceanographic. I'm totally butchering that name. Oceanographic.
Right, okay,
It's
clearly
this
you don't really have
massive-
much care for that watch.
It's massive and it's not attractive. And this guy was so excited about it. So I mean, I'm very honest
Young
with my
guy, old
clients. Middle age.
Okay.
Yeah, but this one I just couldn't, hold. I couldn't fake it.
Right. What's your favorite dish in Hong Kong?
Char siu bao.
Oh, nice one.
nice.
Yeah. And your favorite dish in the States? New York.
Oh,
You're totally Asian-fied now.
burger? I guess, yeah. Either a great slice of pizza or not a mediocre burger, of course. Like,
Yeah.
it has to be a good-ass burger.
Do you like durian?
I do if it's prepared certain ways.
Okay.
Like, straight out of
Frozen.
Frozen's good. In, like
In that
pudding.
dessert, yeah.
Have you ever had it in the oven?
No.
No.
Oh,
That would
it's-
smell.
It's so fragrant. Yeah.
Sounds gross.
Yeah.
That was one of
I
the,
have.
that was one of my first kind of like real big experiences in Hong Kong that was different, where like durian obviously doesn't really exist in the US.
Yeah.
And someone was like, just try it, didn't warn me about it, and I ate it like raw, like just as
Yeah.
a fruit, and it was
Yeah.
just like, ugh.
Why would anybody like this?
Yeah,
right?
why would you do that to me?
Yeah. How about chicken feet?
Never.
Never. Okay. Do you prefer pizza or dim sum?
Fuck, that's tough. Pizza.
Oh, okay. Your favorite watch complication?
Perpetual calendar, probably.
Okay. Were you having a hard time coming to a decision between certain complications?
Yes, just because I'm not I don't focus on technical aspects of the watch,
Right.
which if people come to Watchbox looking for, a super techie in movement, like person that like really appreciates that kind of stuff, I'm not your girl. I go by aesthetic. So for me, I just want a function that's useful and that looks good.
Yeah.
So to me, a good watch with a beautifully balanced perpetual calendar is stunning and exciting. I'll probably, once I am not on the spot, I'll probably think of a better answer, but just off the spot, I would say
Okay.
perpetual calendar.
Diamonds or no diamonds on your watches?
No diamonds.
Okay, there you heard it. I think it's a very consistent message. Right. Last one. How do you think we should get more ladies into watches?
I don't know the answer to that. I think that organically it's kind of coming along anyway. But also I think that, not to say that it's like all on a man's job to do this, but usually I find that when men bring in their wives or girlfriends to the office, that's when I guess you can start to see a woman being interested in it. Or I guess if, someone's husband or boyfriend is so into it that it takes over their lives and they're watching watch reviews and, you can't get away from it spending time with him. At that point, if that was my boyfriend in that situation, I'd want to learn more. I want something to talk to about it. So I think, I don't have an exact answer. I think it's an organic thing. I don't know.
Okay. Right. Well, that's the end of the interview with you. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
doing it. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, so much.
Yeah, was it fun?
I probably blabbed on too much, but
No.
I really enjoyed it.
No, I think it was really good. All right, we'll see you guys on the next one. I hope you liked it.
Bye.
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 Thank you for tuning in to the Waiting List podcast. Hit the subscribe button and the next episode will come straight to your phone as soon as it's ready. Whilst I'm here, please remember to leave a nice review and follow us on Instagram at the Waiting List podcast.